As I crept through the dark, creaking halls of the abandoned Taiwanese school as student Fang Rei Shin, I was reminded that good horror doesn't come from what you see. True, there are a fair share of specters and creatures that I'd encountered. What continued to get under my skin wasn't the fear of death, though, but the haunting dread that pervaded from what could have been Rei's reality. The notes I found, and the hints and prods to the protagonist's life continued to creep through my mind like a spider, unraveling and revealing the reality of events that transpired, as a reminder that some of the best horror is gleamed from reality and everyday life. Red Candle Games is a very small studio in Taiwan who have developed only 2 games. While Devotion has been delisted and made unavailable to the market outside their home country due to a political situation, at least for the time being, their first game, Detention, is widely available and shouldn't be missed. Set in 1960s Taiwan in a martial law period called White Terror, you'll play as protagonist and senior student Fang Rei Shin, who gets trapped inside her school due to a typhoon. Progressively, reality and the world begin to unravel, revealing a haunting past for the students of the school, and the horrible events happening around the period due to the martial law. While there is dialogue in Detention, most of the plot and backstory is unraveled through visual metaphors, or what one can glean from notes and objects left behind by other students. Making your way through the hollowed halls of the school that slowly becomes more and more decrepit and bizarre, alluding increasingly to the personal life of Rei, you'll venture through dark corridors, solve puzzles, and avoid Taiwanese spirits as they try to do you harm. For the most part, you'll spend the majority of your time focusing on the puzzles and directing yourself to where they'll apply to your forward progression, making a mental map of locked doors and rooms that require your personal input before progress can be made. In these puzzles, you'll find notes written by students and staff, exploring the sides of people who are trying to read forbidden books, or what forbidden relationships the staff at the school may have, but also showing the dark side of what can happen to these people when the country is under martial law. And those political horrors seep deeper than the fear we glean from the monsters that roam the halls. Personally, I wish that these creatures that you avoid were more plentiful. They can be found more in the game's first 2 acts and hardly at all in the third, making it feel like new ones aren't introduced as often as they could be. While they're presented meaningfully in the beginning, and you're taught to avoid them in interesting ways through children's storybook cutouts with great illustrations, they don't really evolve from there, making them feel more like an afterthought by the end. Avoiding them, because Rei never acquires any sort of weapon, is still a tense experience, and is always engaging, as they'll often block your path when you least want them around. You're taught to hold your breath, present offerings, or to avoid looking directly at them so as to not disturb them. Their sound design is top-notch as well, with creaking breaths and deep pulsating drums filling the environment with their haunting presence. Still, their utilization, or more so their lack thereof by the conclusion, brings further attention to the events you're immediately privy to. The abstract, psychological horror of the puzzles, and of the creeping dread of the story of Rei as it unfurls. Detention isn't a long game. It doesn't have a large budget written all over it. Characters feel like comic book cutouts, and while art is often beautifully abstract and harrowing, there is a sense that Red Candle is definitely not the largest studio around. Assets have a bit of cheapness to them, and on PlayStation 4, moving left and right, because the game is a side-scrolling adventure, constantly caused screen tearing and sometimes a rare amount of frame rate buckles. With the tribulations of financial difficulties, though, comes a unique triumph of heart. Detention feels personal, and it's incredibly rare to feel as connected to a time and place that you've never experienced. I don't just wish that more games explored periods of history and culture in ways such as this, I wish that horror prevailed in other games of today as much as Detention does. Detention is the best Silent Hill game that's come out in over a decade, and if we're lucky, we'll someday be able to play the team's other work. Gripes aside, if you're a fan of horror and have become ambivalent to the genre as much as I have over the last few years because of its over-reliance on jump scares, you owe it to yourself to play the creeping, slow-moving, and surprisingly unnerving experience that is Detention.